was consenting to that. And here was the final design, I think is what you saw with approved by the Historic Commission, basically a 2-story addition on the eastern, 1-story addition on the eastern portion, and then 3-story addition on the western portion. And this is what you saw. And then after our meeting with CCRA, we got feedback. We heard a great presentation from our neighbor, David Sue, who was adamant that we really, that additional relief in this area, would have impact on his light. So we pulled the building an additional 18 inches. So this is 3 feet from our building to the property line. And additionally, there's a portion here where we basically lowered the height of a 1-story portion that came above of our garage. So the 1st story came up higher. We lowered that by about 5 feet. And I don't know that it's impactful from the street, but from basically the corners where our 3 neighbors meet, this certainly had an impact on our neighbors to the further west at 1722, because I think their deck is there and they wanted to reduce that wall. So after our meeting, I think it was around Memorial Day weekend, Scott and Talia met with the neighbors. We went through the changes, or they went through the changes. They got the feedback, and everyone sort of walked out of that meeting feeling very confident that if we made those changes, we could proceed. So with that, we responded back to CCRA and asked to go to the June meeting. And then somewhere along there was some concern from the 1722 neighbors that maybe this didn't work, maybe they weren't happy with these changes. So we sort of punted to July. We met with them, we studied some additional items, but I just don't think we were able to really make that work or get, come to agreement there. So we came tonight presented with basically what we heard at the last meeting was push the building 3 feet off the line. You can see this is RM1, just a quick, some more context. And I think this is a picture here that sort of gives the context of this is the 1720 building, and their property is built. They go right to the lot line. I think they have a small courtyard here. So we're building up against there, but it was this area here, this 3 feet of their courtyard where we set back. This is where we reduced sort of the wall to make sure it didn't impact those neighbors. So that was essentially where we ended up. We looked at some other alternative designs, but I just don't think we could please all the people all the time with that. So essentially what you have is, as Janice mentioned, you have an existing building with where we end up on the ground floor was about 5.5% open area. And I think there's a courtyard here that has some awnings that reduce that, but from the 2nd floor up, we're pretty close. I think we're at we calculated, I think we're close to 18%. And I have a chart here. And I think that is consistent. If you look in the neighborhood, I don't think anyone in an intermediate block is really 25% open area. So really where the impact is 2nd floor and up. This is the just some near neighbor letters, and this is from our direct neighbor who's probably most impacted directly across Panama Street, who is in support. Here was a sun study, and we really looked at what the impact was on the sun study, and I can, go through that. But essentially, this is kind of where we are with the open area and what's in the neighborhood. So, and I just wanted to get a sense. This is our sort of our courtyard here that exists on the ground floor. This makes up the majority of our open area. But as you can see, it's actually a little larger because you have these awnings here. I don't know if you can see that there, but so, open area in this urban context, I think, is very, you can slice it however you want. And this was the refusal. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. I believe Scott has joined or is joining, and happy to respond to questions.
Are the owners here tonight? You just said.
I believe Scott was joining. He was out of town, but he should be joining.
Okay, I'm going to go.
He's in. I think he's in the waiting room, actually.
Okay. I can't get the Veronica, I can't get the link for participants to come up. Are you co-chair? While I'm solving that technical problem, let's get started with our questions. I could go through the list with our committee, but I believe that our committee last week had a chance to ask the questions. So what I'd like to do is go to our new members and start with them. I'll start with Charles Robin. Do you have any questions on this proposal?
Well, new to the proposal, but as I understand is that the closest near neighbor is now satisfied with the design?
Yes, I think 1720 has indicated that they're not in opposition based on the 3-foot setback.
David Chu here. I will.
Themselves.
Yeah, and I will after the round of, and I'll address that exact question when I'm called on.
So I'll pass.
Okay. How about Steve Rubin?
No, I did take a look at it and I looked at the plan. I have no questions really.
Okay, do we have Rick with us tonight? I didn't see you.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Did you have any?
Yeah, I'm looking at it and analyzing it as there's a requirement for 25% open space, which virtually no properties in this area achieve. But that's the leverage by which the neighbors can ask for improvements that make this thing better. And all of the neighbors are satisfied. There aren't any that are holding out and are objecting to this.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah,
That's not correct.
Okay. So could someone correct me then and provide what the missing context is?
My understanding is that the neighbors at 1722 are still not satisfied.
Okay.
We met with them. I think we came out of a meeting thinking we had an agreement. Then we found out that we didn't have an agreement. We tried to make additional changes and redesign, and that came into, we kind of went down a rabbit hole of really designing the project, really making more changes, and it just seemed like we kind of got a little far upfield. So we said, we kind of came back to this kind of what we agreed to, or what we thought we'd agreed to Memorial Day, and kind of what was the basis for the objection at the last CCRA meeting, which was the.
And where are they situated? This is 1718, so 1720 is immediately to the left.
So 1718 is this 1718 goes and cuts across sort of in an L shape. The neighbors from 1720, and David is here, and I'm sure he'll get a chance to speak for himself, is directly behind him. His property goes all the way to the property line, so he has a blank wall here, and then there's a courtyard, and then I think consistent with that property line is the neighbors at 1722, and they have 100% coverage, and they go back. I think they have a roof deck here that they were concerned about, that we tried to respond to.
Okay, so it is immediately adjacent to the 1720 property, which is catty corner to this piece that's been adjunct to 1718 for quite some time.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I have no other questions.
Okay, one other new person on our committee is Flora Becker. Do you have any questions?
Laura, you're muted.
Sorry. How high is this wall going to be from the street or between this property and the neighbor's property?
So I believe, let me see if I can find the total dimension. 36 foot 7 inches is the top of the third floor addition. And you know, of course,
So
38
the
feet
wall
is.
is an extension of the current wall.
So this is, if you can see, this is the proposed addition, which is this area here. It's a 3-story addition on one portion and a 2-story addition on the other portion. So on the easternmost portion, we're doing a 1-story addition here, if you can see. And on the western portion, we're doing a 3-story addition at 36 feet, set 3 foot back off of the property line. And I think it meets their party wall, the Sue's party wall in the back of their, because they go all the way to the lot line. So we meet there, but we're set back 3 feet off the wall. And that is, so that's, I don't know if that makes sense, or I could show you the
Well,
original.
it's not clear. Are you saying that the additional height is about 3 feet? Is that what you're, there's a current wall?
No. Currently, there's an open air parking space here. So we're proposing a 3-story building here and a 2-story portion here as an addition to the existing home and the existing. And I think if I can clarify, just so you're clear, I'll move up to the existing condition, and maybe you can see that. Let's see if I have a good picture here.
I think she's
Sorry.
questioning the existing party wall is at what?
The existing party wall, I think, let's see if I have a photo here. The rear, I'm sorry, this is much easier on. I can show you this. This area where I have my cursor is the back of
The current
1720.
building?
That's the current building. It goes to the property line. That I'm guessing is about 40 feet, somewhere in that range, 35 to 40 feet is my guess. We're proposing putting our addition here, setting it back 3 feet off of this property line. So it's basically the same width, I believe, of their addition. So it would be flush with their building. There's no windows in that wall, so it would be flush and come across. And then
And
this
where you're-
portion is a
where-
2-story addition.
Where your cursor is, that's where Panama Street is.
Panama
okay.
Street is
And then
here.
The front is here at Delancey.
The front of the house is at Delancey. That's remaining unchanged. There is a 1-story portion and a courtyard that connects. And then there's an existing 1-story portion today and a parking space. We're proposing to build 3 stories on the parking space and 1 additional story on the addition for basically a 3 and 2-story condition. And I think the big change here was reducing the height of this portion here and pulling it 3 feet off of that wall, off of that property line.
You're representing that the neighbors have agreed to this.
I'm representing.
Are they renters? Are the owners?
No,
agreeing?
I don't know what
It's not clear.
anybody's, I don't know what anybody's condition is. I don't know, but
Well, no,
I'm
but you're
and I'll let David
representing
speak.
that you have permission from the neighbors.
Sorry, I forgive the intrusion. My name is David Chu. When called on by the speaker, by the chairwoman, I will speak for 1720 and for 1722.
That's great. What I've represented was that we had a meeting. I guess I'll let David speak for himself because I don't know that maybe I don't understand his position, but as I said,
Well, he'll be
17
called on, but I'm asking
Yeah.
you.
He's not
Are you
representing
representing
Flora.
that you have permission from the neighbors that they?
I did not say that.
No, he didn't, Flora. They'll speak for themselves. Yep.
Okay.
But I did present a letter of our neighbor adjacent on the south side of Panama Street that sent a letter of support. And I do have other signatures from your neighbors in a petition that I provided to the committee.
Well, let me
Laura?
ask this. How many other houses on the street have, you also said that very few actually have 25% open space. Was
Correct.
this ordinance put in after that had been attained?
I mean, I suspect that many of these houses are old. I can't tell you when the 25% of RM1 came into being, but you know, this part of Center City is an older part, and there's houses that are old. There's been additions. There's been all kinds of different things that have happened over the years. But I would say that you know, there's really no one here is really conforming to the code specifically.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Flora. We do have a pretty large committee, and we did go over this project last month. I don't want to prevent anybody on the committee from asking a question if you feel like you need to, but at the same time, I don't know that we need to do a roll call. So does anyone else who has heard this presentation last month have any questions? Okay, seeing none. I'd like to get a feel.
Just one thing. It was actually, I think in May. Last month it was on the agenda, but we didn't, they postponed it. So it was 2 months ago that we did hear this.
Thank you.
I'm thinking that there's no hardship for what they want to take away some space from.
I think that, Doug, we can have that discussion in our closed session.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to get a feel for how many people from the neighborhood there are. I know I see Mr. Sue. Is there any other person here that wants to speak?
We would like to speak when called on. We're 1712.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry
So,
about that. It was muted,
yeah.
but I'm at 1714 and I'd also like the opportunity to speak, please.
All right, it sounds like we have up to 5 folks. And so out of courtesy, I would like to, if I had to have folks be, making sure you are speaking to the variance, and not to other issues that you may feel are relevant but are not zoning. And that's one thing. And secondly, I'd like to, we can come back to folks, but I would like your first comments to please be limited to 3 minutes. And let's.
And please state your name first and your address.
Thanks, Ben. Yep. So could we start now with Allison and Anthony?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Anthony Jaworski, 1712 Panama Street. And both my wife Allison Hanson and I, after discussing this, we decided that we are opposed to the 1718 Delancey variance. We feel that the addition will infringe upon like existing ambient and reflected light coming into our home in the evening hours. That's one thing that we really, really do like about our home. We recently purchased it in May, moved in May rather. And so far we've been very satisfied with the wonderful light moving through the home throughout the day. And that's kind of all we have to say about that.
Okay. Let's see, next I would say, do we have, who is it Eileen O'Brien?
Yes, I'm opposed to this variance because I don't believe anything has been.
What's your address, please?
Oh, excuse me. I'm 338 South 17th. My property has a rear on the Panama Street side. And I spend a lot of time with my neighbors on the block. So I'm familiar with the light that they do receive currently and the impact of the new construction might have on that. My concern also goes to the alleged need for 94.5% lot coverage as there's been no explanation for what hardship the property is currently suffering. Thank you.
Mr. Su.
You. I think based on my experience from last time, this committee is most interested in hearing about personal air and light. And so I'll just say that the modifications does help mitigate our concerns, yet on the broader issue of hardship, there, that's still an open issue in my mind. My main purpose actually for speaking tonight, I live at 1720 Delancey. My main purpose for speaking tonight is to represent my neighbors at 1722 Delancey, whose south-facing portion of the property will be directly impacted by the proposed addition. And I'd like to explain why the residents are not here to speak on their own behalf. Professor David Wallace is in England caring for his 94-year-old mother and assisting in end-of-life care. Professor Rita Copeland has a big event at the hospital to prepare for ongoing treatment. And to quote her, "I want to convey that I'm committed to the objections, but my attention must be elsewhere right now." I think while many on this call would rather be spending a summer evening in a different way, I would guess that everyone would rather be on this call rather than endure what Rita is currently facing. That is the reason they are not here to speak on their own behalf. I do, however, have a written statement that David Wallace composed, and I would like, with your permission, to place that in the chat window and to verbally articulate that very succinct statement. Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So now everyone has a copy of that. I'm going to read the statement aloud. Dear CCRA, I am David Wallace, representing 1722 Delancey Street. I apologize for not attending this meeting in person. I am currently in England taking care of my mother, 94, who has been hospitalized. The speed at which this meeting has been convened so soon after the last one is surprising. Scott has not complied with the CCRA rule that he should show adjacent neighbors the specific plans he is proposing. I have no idea which particular plan is before you now. Our objection is, as ever, that with any and all of the plans that we have seen so far, we will suffer genuine hardship through loss of light and air. On seeing Scott's original design, I suggested, firstly, that the design should not be 3-story on one side, 2 on the other, but rather 2-2. Scott stated categorically that this was off the table. I then suggested that the 3-2 configuration be flipped so that the 2-story part should be on the left as viewed from Panama Street. Scott agreed to this, but the drawing that he did eventually show me was still very close to 3-3. It includes both a deck built at 27 feet and a massive staircase rising to 35 feet. When I suggested that the staircase be built on the right-hand side, Scott responded that this was not possible. This means that Scott wishes to maximize his family living space, already substantial, at the expense of our air and light.
David, we don't need to have a word-for-word conversation.
Okay.
We understand your position and your.
Well, again, it's not my position. I'm speaking on behalf.
We understand that.
Of my neighbor. Okay. Okay. So you get again, with the permission of the chairwoman, I would like to pose 2 to 3 questions, if time allows, maybe after this first round, which David and Rita would love to have some answers on in front of this committee.
Well, David, I just wanted to say the format of the meeting is for you to present your concerns. So really, this is not an opportunity for you to question other members of the public or our committee. But I'm sure that you can get your point across by just explaining your concerns.
Yes. So with your permission, I'd like just to kind of like point out 2 very quick procedural matters. One, notification at 26 hours seems on its face somewhat unfair. And 2, making plans available to the adjacent neighbors and everyone less than 8 hours before this meeting, again, on its face seems unfair. The questions, again, I am speaking on behalf of David Wallace and Rita Copeland. They're in this situation because of extenuating circumstance and because of the very, very short amount of time and notice leading to this proceeding. Now, again, I have questions that get to, or in the spirit of improving the positive characteristics.
David, you are
of the
not
built
interviewing
environment.
here. You are not going to interview the.
I'm not interviewing. I asked for permission.
I will not allow it. You have to state what the concerns are in relation to the land use issue we have in front of us, which is open area and wanting an exchange for getting that open area to have some kind of benefit. And if you can speak to that, we're all ears.
Okay,
time's
great.
up.
So.
Okay.
time's up.
Is there anyone else here from the community that would like to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, Jim Hammond.
Yes, I'm Jim Hammond. I'm at 1714 Panama Street. Most probably the most directly affected neighbor on Panama Street present at this meeting. I've been here 25 years, and it just sort of struck me today as I walked out of my front door that, you know, for 25 years, I've been able to look to my northwest and see blue sky and trees and clouds. And were this project allowed to move forward, I would instead be looking at a 36 high wall. This would deprive me of some significant ambient light, as well as potentially some airflow from the west or from the northwest. And as to the existing lot coverage of everybody else, well, that's why we have zoning codes. A lot of these predate that. And I guess my final statement is, you know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Thank you. Are there others?
If you don't mind, I'd like to say a couple words. Carl Fiebig, 1925 Naudane. My wife and I recently had a young child and have had the opportunity to spend some time on the street. And I think something that no one's necessarily have commented on here is retention of young families within the city. I think that's something that many of us face in older structures as families have grown. I've had the opportunity to be introduced to Scott and Talia and know that they want to expand their family. So I would just ask that everybody kind of keeps that in the back of their mind as they're looking at this, because as a young father myself, the more that we could retain those young families in the city, I think will continue to help it grow and prosper. So I would just ask that you keep that in mind.
Thank you.
If I may speak, Kelly Chato, 1706 Panama Street. And Carl, thank you so much for that point. That was actually something I wanted to.
Sorry, could you repeat your name and address, please?
Sure. My name is Kelly Chato, and my address is 1706 Panama Street.
Okay.
And I would like to thank Carl for bringing up the point about small families. I myself am going to be trying to start a small family in my small house that is half the size of Scott and Talia's house. So air and light is exceptionally important. And though my house is not adjacent, sharing a wall, this project will greatly impact my air and light that comes into my house, especially the room that would be a nursery, the room that would be a playroom for my children. It will be greatly impacting those things. I'm very happy to share with the committee. I've taken photographs out in the street to see where the sun is and where it hits all of the houses on Panama Street at 7 o'clock in the evening when this, just to illustrate the point of the reason why we're all showing up. We have very small houses. We don't have almost no backyard, so we go to the front of our house, which is our small street, to get air and light. So if we are going to be robbed of that air and light because we have a massive building as big as Planned Players, it will greatly impact us. And there has been, unfortunately, not an interest in understanding that from Scott and Talia to really talk through and work with us to understand our concerns of why we are objecting the project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I might add, make just one small addendum. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The letter in support of the project from the Panama Street neighbor immediately south of 1718 Delancey is from, I believe, the building's owner and not a resident. It's the building is apartments, and I believe she has her her office there. But I don't believe she's a resident.
Okay, very good. I know, David, you felt interrupted, so we're going to give you another 90 seconds for you to state quickly what it was that what you were trying to say to us.
Just one question. Per the plans, a third floor adds 425 square feet on an added structure of over 2,000 square feet. And I just want to know and hear, what is the hardship such that a 2-2 structure is off the table? This is spoken on behalf of David Wallace and Rita Copeland at 1722 Delancey.
Thank you.
Computer.
I'm sorry, is that a question for me?
That's a question that's, I don't know how you choose to handle it, but
I mean,
David and
we
Rita
discussed
offered
hardships at the zoning board, so we're happy to have that conversation at the zoning board. Here, we're talking about
There's no
impact on
point in even
neighbors.
stating here in front of us. There's no point.
That's fine. Again, like
So
this
we're
impacts their
happy
light
to
and
hear.
air. Bob Lane, this is something that I think affects, if there's going to be a trade-off of lot coverage for height, David and Rita have offered a reasonable compromise of 2-2. And so why is that off the table?
I mean, we're happy to have those discussions, and we've had those discussions. And I have to say, my client's frankly a little bit frustrated because we have the discussions, we sort of shake hands in a meeting, we walk out of the meeting, and then it changes. And then we propose something else that was responded to, and then it changes. So, I mean, I don't mean to be, I think, I'm sure people are frustrated with this, and we don't want to be here, belaboring the points, but the comments that we had at the last meeting was, the 18 inches was the big issue. That was going to be an issue. We made that change. Everyone, and we met with the near neighbors, and we met, and I wasn't there, but maybe someone can represent someone else. But my client walked out of that meeting feeling that there was agreement, and there wasn't. And then there was a request for additional design changes. We engaged our architect to make additional design changes. We presented those. That wasn't good enough, and then it was design this, change this. So I think we felt comfortable coming back to the last comments that we heard at the last meeting was additional 18 inches, reduce the height of the first floor, and that's where we ended up. Respectfully.
Speaking on behalf of David and Rita, if something is adversely, substantially, and permanently affecting you, I don't know that there is a time, one problem is that plans were never shared. Language is imprecise. And so immediately when we have plans, we can understand. That was, unfortunately, even as the resident of 1720, I have never personally received a plan from Scott and Talia. I'm the next door neighbor. Language is imprecise. And so it does take some back and forth on imprecise language to understand. And so again, I wish that they were here to represent their own interests. This is again, a permanent, substantial, and adverse event. And they wish they could be here to speak on behalf of themselves.
Right, unless there are any other comments, I think we can move on to the next case. I want to thank everyone for your thoughtful comments, and we will consider them in closed session.
Can I just ask one question? I'm sorry.
Certainly.
David, I know you're speaking on behalf of your adjacent neighbors, but
I want to see for work.
David, are you satisfied?
Am I satisfied? The light and air, this committee wants to hear about light and air. And so, yes, there have those adjustments do not block our light and air, but it does impact 1722.
I can't talk. Okay.
Thank you. So just to, I think we responded to David's concerns, but I think what he said was we did not respond to 1722's concerns adequately, I think was what I heard. Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a question about the light and air in light of the graphics here showing, which are left up on screen share?
Certainly, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It ranges from 8 to 8:45 PM, and I'm sure the story is, that at any time when the sun is setting in the west, and that's to the right, it looks like the taller building on, is it 18th Street to the right, is going to be causing a shadow that would essentially overlap with any shadow that's created or obviate the need for any shadow being cast by the addition. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think that's correct. I think that, and I'm happy to share the shadow studies, and I know they're always hard to read for lay people and even for.
What about the earlier time? So 8 PM, not a surprise.
Well, I think they did 8 PM because I think that is the time when the sun is sort of setting in the west in the summer. I think other times of the year the sun's lower, so there's less impact. And I don't know if Scott wants to respond to that, but I think the reason why they chose June at 8 PM is that's probably the time where the most sun comes down the street. And I think in the other parts of the year that taller building probably does cause does cause shadows. So this is the time where there's probably there's minimal impact, but that's probably where the impact happens.
I mean, a complete picture would have been to show it at the different times of the year, right? So the sun's angle is going to be different too. So the sun would have set at 8, much earlier than 8 PM in the spring, but it also would have shown that the sun was setting at an angle farther to the south, so that shadow would be cast in the different direction, right? So it would be to the
I would
bottom
think
of the
that
screen.
building's.
What we're seeing is north at the bottom, west at the right. So I guess I'm understanding it correctly, but I'm not going to be particularly persuaded by this because number one, it's very hard to read by having north on the bottom and west on the right. And it's only choosing, one time during the solar year, and that's not going to give a very good impression about what happens at different times of the year.
I think the reason why they chose that is probably because at the other times of year, the sun is so much lower in the sky that those larger buildings have.
So, right, and it's to the south, so that
right. So
the property on the north side of the street isn't going to be casting any shadows at all.
Correct.
Correct. So the sun rarely comes over the north side of the street, since our proposed addition is on the north side of the street. Rarely does the sun actually set and come over our property line. So, summer solstice is a time when you would see the greatest impact. So we wanted to show the time of the greatest possible impact, which is on this very day of the year.
But the neighbors talked about reflected light. Is there a way you could comment on that?
Well, that was the whole reason why at the beginning of this process, Stokes, our architect, provided some facade possibilities that were significantly darker, made of wood or dark brick. And at the onset, our position was we have to keep it a light color facade so that we are promoting light down the block and allowing light to bounce, because we figured that would be a important topic for our neighbors on Panama Street. So
right. I mean, it strikes
that was
me
our
that,
sort of.
It strikes me that by building a light colored facade at street, you're actually going to increase the amount of reflected light coming from the south.
Right. Yeah, that was sort of the
intention.
That was the intention.
Air circulation is another thing that probably will be reduced. But the light thing, unless I'm completely missing something, it doesn't seem to be a direct issue.
That's what the sun study brought to light for us. And that's why we conducted the sun study.
Yeah, I mean, just as an aside, I mean, when I passed that new line of houses on Lombard Street across from the pool, it's got to have a meaningful impact on the amount of light coming in those houses on the south side of Lombard because it's so bright white. And I could imagine neighbors complaining about that as opposed to wanting less light coming in because that's so reflective.
Excuse me, just in the interest of time, excuse me, my name is Veronica Aplenc and I'm co-chair and I'm assisting Janice on the technical end. I apologize for interrupting. I see we have a couple of hands raised. Jim Hammond has raised his hand. Allison and Anthony at 1712 Panama have raised their hand. And then Kelly and Chido has also raised her hand. So I do want to hear from everybody and I apologize. I'm wondering if we can circle now to the neighbors and then circle back to any additional questions, just so we move forward efficiently.
I just would like to know, Veronica, are those are not repeats?
I think that these individuals can let us know whether they are, whether those questions are repeats.
This is a repeat, but with qualification addressing the matter just brought up.
Likewise.
We were talking about reflected light, ambient light on Panama Street. To your point about the place on Lombard Street reflecting south, I don't know what the neighbors think about looking across their street and not seeing blue sky, but instead seeing the white outline, the white reflective wall of a property. Panama Street is significantly narrower than Lombard, which means that angles are much more acute. And again, my point is that for 25 years, I've been able to walk out of my door, look to the northwest and see blue sky. If this project is allowed to move forward, I'll never see that blue sky again. I'll be looking at the back of 1718 Delancey. Okay. Ambient light in this case is not reflected off of another building. This is natural light that is not perhaps direct sunlight, but is reflected by the atmosphere. The sun, if you're on the south side of Panama Street, the sun never shines on the front of your house. The sun study is absolutely correct. But that's not really the issue. The issue for us is if you look at the photograph of the property as it currently stands, you'll see what I'm talking about as far as the existing view, the existing natural light. And if you were to superimpose the design on that, you'll see everything that we're losing. And it's a pretty significant loss. And once lost is never regained. We have plays and players. I bought the house knowing that we have plays and players in front, but at least we had to the northwest some natural light. And now we won't.
Veronica, you need to assist me because the raised hand function is not visible on my computer for some reason.
Sure.
But I think we have to limit to no more repeats. I think we're hearing similar points being repeated.
Great. So Allison and Anthony, I'm sorry, I don't recall your last names at 1712 Panama. Do you have new comments or repeats?
You can.
If you have a new comment, please proceed. If you have a repeat, we'd like to be efficient and move forward.
You can skip us.
Okay, thank you, Allison and Anthony. And Kelly, I apologize, Chido, that's not how you pronounce your last name.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. No one ever gets it. If I may just share my screen just to illustrate the light point, just to have a visual to go with, if that's okay with the committee.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Great. So this is where the sun last Friday at 7 o'clock at night. And as you can see, Scott and Talia's home would be blocking all of that light coming through, and we would not get any of that reflective light. That covers into my house at 1706 on the left side picture. Just a touch through my transom on my front door, but all of my second and third light will be gone. And then you can tell that it exceeds all the way out to 1702, and their upper floors will be affected as well on 17.
How long?
How
And then
long?
what time is that? What time is that picture?
That is at 7:02 in the evening. And I can tell you a month ago, till 8 o'clock in the evening, I had sunlight in through my first floor window. So I'm
Sun
very,
study kind of.
yeah, I'm very happy to share. I work in the photo industry. We do sun studies all the time to track the light for where we can shoot. So I'm very happy to share another sun study that I independently did, or share more photos from the year of how that would affect and why we're so concerned, if that would be helpful to the committee.
That might be very relevant for the zoning board and much less for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other raised hands. Is that accurate? Okay, thank you.
All right. Again, thank you for all of your comments.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, our next case is 2009-11 Sansom Street, zone CMX4. This is a refusal for a projecting sign, which is prohibited in the district. And the reason for the refusal is whereas projecting signs are prohibited in the center city commercial area on properties that do not front on Market Street between Front and Fifth Street. This project was at our last meeting. I was asked to transmit the comments of the committee to the applicant, and I did so. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carrie, I believe.
Hi, good evening. My name's Carrie Nace-Pass. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Fox Rothschild. Here this evening with me is the owner and applicant of the property, Brett Naylor, as well as the sign contractor, Eric Rothworth. As indicated, we were here last month. I will be brief. I know it's been a long meeting so far, but just to refresh your memory, and if I may share my screen, I think I have ability to do so.
It's available.
Great. Here we go. One moment, please. Okay, you can see my screen now. Okay. Great. So just to refresh your memory, my client is in the process of redeveloping this property. It's the social club. It was a dance studio. They are renovating it for a restaurant. And the intent was always to renovate the building and the facade, but keep the existing sign that you can see here in this photograph, and keeping that sign, but just simply replacing the face of it and the content to identify the name of the restaurant. The prior permit for this prior sign was permitted. However, it was an existing non-conformity under the current zoning code. During the renovations, it was determined that the structure of the sign was deteriorating, not safe, and that the structural support system needed to be replaced. We believed going into the permitting process that this sign would be permitted to remain as an existing non-conformity, as we were not changing the size, location, the dimensions of it. However, as we went through the process, Elle and I did determine that we would need to go through and obtain the variances. What we are proposing, I'm just bringing it up here. Here is a comparison that was submitted. As you can see on the left-hand sign, we had the former sign, which was the Academy of Social Dance. On the right-hand sign was the Wilder, which is the name of the proposed restaurant. As I indicated, we are keeping the sign in the same dimensions and the same location, and it will be installed the same manner as the prior existing sign. As you can see here, the height is the same at 270 inches, width along the bottom is 72 inches, width at the top is 36 inches. We also have the depth of the sign, which would be 11 inches, which is the same as the former. We did submit to the board a letter from our architect confirming that the dimensions would be the same as the prior existing sign, and Mr. Rothworth can also attest to that as well this evening. However, we did receive comments back that there were some concerns that the actual location I'm sorry, this is jumping up here. The actual dimensions were not in fact going to be the same, and that the width may have been wider. So we're certainly able to answer any questions that you may have with respect to the actual dimensions of the sign. Again, as indicated, the only thing that will be changed is the actual face and the content of the sign. Were there any specific questions with regard, or do you want me to continue and take all questions to the end?
Carrie, there was one other thing that our committee mentioned that we requested that you look at the lighting. Can you describe?
Correct. Yep. So we'll move on to that. So again, there was some question regarding the lighting that's being proposed. So we here's the lighting that we had shown at the last meeting. And we believe that it is important that the sign have some lighting to it in order to properly identify the location of the restaurant during the evening hours. But we wanted to come before the board this evening and discuss what the lighting is and possibly talk about some limitations that we may be able to agree to that would also address the board's concerns. But what I would like to do is just ask Mr. Rothworth to give a little bit better explanation as to the type of lighting that is being proposed. You know, at our last meeting, we didn't really get into too much of the details. We did inform you that what was proposed is actually a neon tubing that goes around the exterior of the sign, and then the letters are actually a neon tubing as well. However, I think the word neon may not be the best characterization. From what I understand, the lighting is actually going to be more of a soft, warm peach color, but not actually a bright neon. But again, Mr. Rothworth is on the line here, and if I could just turn it over to him to give a little bit better explanation as to what the lighting is, what it's proposed, and what we expect the illumination to look like at evening. Mr. Rothworth, are you on the line?
Yes. Yes, so it's not going to be an excessively bright sign. The peach color is not a very bright color, and it's each side of the sign is putting out the equivalent lumens of about 4 100-watt light bulbs spread over the whole face of the sign. So that's just about 3 watts per square foot of the face of the sign. So it's not going to be a very bright, glaring sign.
One of the suggestions or items that we are willing to agree to as a condition, if you deem appropriate, is that we would agree to put some limitations on time. We would propose that the light be lit from dusk, knowing that that changes depending on the time of year, until 10 p.m. Knowing that that's, you know, a pretty reasonable time for the evening for a light like this to be turned off. But we don't believe, again, just given the explanation in terms of the luminaires that will be on the sign, that it will be offensive to the surrounding area. But certainly we are here this evening. We would like to work with the committee in addressing the concerns, and, you know, certainly open to suggestions and having a conversation in terms of what the concerns are and what you may like to see there in terms of the lighting.
Okay, I think we can, okay, like we did, as we did last time. I know that our new members may have questions about the proposal that they would not have otherwise, you know, didn't have a chance to ask because they're new. So let me start with Flora.
Laura, excuse me, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no,
There you go.
I had turned it off. Is it my understanding that the dimensions are pretty much the same as they are currently with the social dancing?
That is correct. They are actually the same. They are the same.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have no questions.
Thank you. How about Rick?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Charles Robin? All right, Steve.
Yeah, just one question. Was the previous sign illuminated? I don't remember it being illuminated, but.
Sure, and again, I'm going to ask Mr. Rothworth to address that, but it's my understanding that it originally, it was in fact illuminated, and in fact, the zoning permit for the original sign did allow for the illumination. But Mr. Rothworth, can you address that? I know you had indicated that you had taken a look at that.
The original sign was illuminated with neon, but then when the social dance took it over, it was covered up with just aluminum with vinyl letters.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was doing, a lot of like research on the building, and I found one. I mean, it's like one of those old like 1940s pictures of like the curb. So it's not like it's faced towards the street and not like a great picture of the street, but it has somewhat of the front of our building, and it has like the very bottom of the sign. And it was when in the 50s, in the 40s and 50s, it was this place called the Moby Dick Tavern. And it looks like that they also had a similar, it looks like that same bottom sign that Carrie has here. I mean, again, it's not like the full picture of the building because I don't know what they were taking a picture of, but it was just an interesting observation. So that's all I got about that.
Carrie, I wanted to mention to you that last presentation that you made, you did talk about the contact with folks on the street. Do you want to repeat that, please?
Sure. Two things that I'd like to mention. One is we have a signature page here. Brett had reached out to many of the owners and tenants on the street, had discussed the sign with them. None of them had concerns with what was being proposed, and in fact supported the sign that is being proposed. In addition, the plan or the sign that is being proposed was also reviewed and approved by both the Art Commission as well as the Historic Commission. So we do have those approvals as well in terms of size, content, and the lighting.
All right. Charles, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss you.
No, I'll wait for my comment to close session.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has any questions from the committee that didn't get them answered last time?
This is Ben Zuckerman.
I have a question about, didn't we talk about having it non-illuminated?
We did ask them to not illuminate it, but they're coming back with a request to do a lower level illumination. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
And Ben?
Yeah, can you give us some technical specifications of the lighting, the type, the illumination, something that explains the lighting in a way that makes some kind of logical and technical sense? Like, I mean, saying it's equal to 4 light bulbs is not, as far as I can see, not really descriptive.
Sure. Mr. Rothworth, are you able to go through those specifications?
Well, it's the equivalent lumen output of 4 100-watt bulbs spread over the 100 square foot surface.
I mean, is there a lumen number for this? What is it that you're saying is equal to 4 bulbs?
It's about 3 watts of illumination per square foot.
I'll put it this way, if you were standing at 21st and Sansom looking east, you'd be able to see the illuminated sign, correct?
Yeah, you would be able to make out the letters, yes.
So that's the context you got then. So, you're talking about illumination on the block. You're walking down the street, it's going to be there. It's going to be illuminated. If you're further down at 21st and Sansom, you'll see it. And probably, this is closer to 20th Street, probably if you're mid-block of the 1900 block of Sansom Street, you'd be able to see it also. That's contents.
You'll be able to see it, but it's not like it's illuminating the street. And it's illuminated so you can see it, but it's not throwing a vast amount of light out into the street.
This is Ben Zuckerman again. Knowing that the previous sign, even if it originally was lit years ago, hadn't been lit, why is it essential that this sign be lit?
I think in terms of the prior use, which was the social club, and I don't know their hours of operation, but it's my understanding that they likely were not open during the later evening hours, where in this instance, we have a restaurant that will be open till, past 10 o'clock at night. I believe last time we had talked that it would probably be 11, Brett. Is that what your hours are proposed?
Yeah, so during the week, it's, we'll be on for lunch and dinner, but dinner service will be done at 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, so 10 o'clock. So again, it's a matter of, illuminating it so that people can easily recognize and identify the location of the restaurant.
I would just comment that most of the buildings in the city do not have illuminated signs protruding from the facade, and people have no trouble finding them. Why do you think people would have a problem finding this if it's not lit?
Well, I think it's a combination too of like seeing the building and then also the design. I mean, the intent. So I don't know what I call it, like the floral pattern that you see on the bottom and the sides, that's all hand painted part of the sign. So the intent is for the entire sign, like an artistic look to it. And, back to the brightness of the light. Like, I don't want the light to be bright, so I want it to accent the hand painted part of the sign. So it's a balance of both, that it's not overwhelming that aspect of the.
I have one last question, and I've been on this block a million times, but I don't remember. Are there street lights on the block?
No. Yes.
Yeah, there's a couple. Yeah.
And they illuminate the areas around them, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would there be a street light illuminating this sign?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, thank you.
If I may,
Janice, can I just ask a question? Actually, Barry, did you not say that, this is Michelle, by the way, did you not say that the lights would be turned off at 10 at night? Did you say that, or did I misunderstand you saying that?
no, that is correct. That it was something that we are offering, that they would just be on from dusk to 10.
Okay, thank you.
And again, we're here this evening because we really do want to work with the committee to address the concerns. Limiting the time that the lights are on was one suggestion. If there is a different type of lighting, if you prefer, if it was backlit and maybe that didn't have as much of an illumination, and that's something that you could consider, we're certainly willing to take a look at that and, propose a different type of lighting on the letters that you think may be less intrusive. But again, our purpose really tonight is we do want to work with the committee so that we can move forward with this, and would like to get a sense really in terms of your position on the lighting.
I do want to mention to you what our position was after the last meeting. And that's not to say that, we'll have a closed session discussion, but just to be clear, the committee's position was that we would be willing to not oppose the sign if it were not illuminated and if it were the same size. So that's where we were last time. And we will discuss, what you have come back with in our closed session.
Thank you very much.
So I think, I mean, with that being said, and, you know, we want to be able to move forward with the sign fabrication. We would prefer not to need to come back at yet another meeting. So with that being said, you know, if we agree just to remove the lighting and agree that it will not be illuminated at night, would that satisfy this board at this point so that we could proceed?
Again, we will have to confirm that in our closed session as we have some new members. I will say that that's what our position was last time. So I have to leave it at that. I wish there were more certainty in the world.
Understood.
I want to signal that Ben Weinrob also has his wind up. Ben also has his hand up. Ben W., did you have a question too?
Yeah, quickly, there was one neighbor who spoke up last time opposing it. Was there any conversation or resolution with that neighbor? I think it was the owner of Sansom and 20th on the corner.
Was this neighbor a commercial person? They're all commercial establishments, aren't they?
He was a building owner that I think lived above the restaurants on the corner.
Well, all right.
Can I just squeeze a clarifying question in?
I was just saying, I didn't recall, I didn't get notice or recall any neighbors opposing it, because I would have definitely reached out to the neighbor, what have you.
Right, and I actually deferred to Brett on that one because I don't recall that either. I don't recall anyone attending that meeting or voicing any objection to it.
I do recall what Ben was referring to. And it was somebody who mentioned, I think their window would have been impacted, their bedroom window or something to that effect by the light.
I do recall somebody had asked about the height of the sign and if it was going to project above the roof, and we had shown them where the height limits were, but I don't remember a specific objection to it.
You joined at the end, and I don't know if you were still on during that time. I don't know if any of the committee can chime in on that.
It was the owner of Village Whiskey who came in after the meeting had ended.
Oh, well, that's
Well, we
why
can
we
talk
weren't on
among
after the
ourselves
meeting
about
had ended. We had left once the presentation was over. My understanding was you would be in closed session, so we had dropped off the meeting at that time.
Yeah, just one clarifying question. The letter that you showed with the signatures from the neighbors, was that with or without the understanding that the sign would be illuminated?
My understanding is that it was with the understanding that it would be illuminated, but Brett, you had those conversations. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, so it was so the I presented on that stapled sheet, and I still have the original, but I stapled the historic approval, which showed the illumination and all that stuff, and then also the Arts Commission approval, which stated in its letter I forget the exact words, but that they strongly approved or liked the sign and that it was illuminated and so forth. And then all the drawings, and it was, so we talked about it. Answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation and for coming back.
Excuse me for interrupting. Rick, I see your hand. You have your hand up, and Michelle, I don't know if your raised hand is a leftover hand.
Yeah,
or
no,
hand.
it's not leftover. I just wanted to ask the building owners and their council, can you provide us definitive information that shows that no shadows will be cast? You know, the level of lumens that you've described, it doesn't really answer the question, is it going to cause somebody's second floor window to have light coming in that cast shadows or disturb sleep or what have you? I mean, you are limiting it to 10 p.m., which resolves the issue about most people sleep, but is there anything you could offer that shows that at that level of illumination, there would be no shadows?
Well, you can see in the sample sign, it says the Chow Kit. It's one of their neon examples. It will throw light onto the buildings. That is, no matter what the lumens are, it's going to do that if it remains neon.
Well,
Can we reserve our conversation among the committee for after we let the applicants go?
No, I'd like them to respond. Not some member of the committee to say that that picture represents the amount of lumens on the sign.
All right, and I appreciate that. Eric, if you could address that, but my understanding is that this sign is actually somewhat brighter than what this would be. This one is a little bit more muted, would I say? But I don't know, Eric, is there some documentation that we could provide that would show, you know, what the effects would be of this sign on adjacent properties?
Nothing that I have with me at this time. I mean, I could work on something, but without knowing how the Cal kit builds, I can't know how much light it's putting out. I mean, it looks like it's quite a bright sign. There's, you know, different colors have different brightnesses, different power supplies have different brightnesses. So without having knowledge of the individual sign, I can't really know.
And are you talking about the Chow Kit sign?
Yeah, that's what they mentioned. Yeah.
Right. So, but are you, I know we don't have anything that we could provide at this moment, but is there something that we could provide after the meeting in the next couple of days that could show it for their consideration?
I mean, maybe I could come up with some local samples that they could take a look at night, other signs, so they could have an idea.
Or a letter from a lighting engineer saying, at this level of lumens, this is the effect. I mean, there's a scientific answer to this based on the amount of lumens that it's going to give out.
Okay, so you want the effect at 20 feet away? What are you looking for? What's going to?
I'm just suggesting that the committee seems, and I'm new, but it seems likely not to approve what we'll see.
He's only speaking for
illumination.
himself, not for the committee. Just understand that.
Right.
This Ben Zuckerman, I've just gone on Google Earth and I've gotten down to the street level of a very recent photograph of it showing it under construction and the sign is not there. Directly in front of the building is a tall street lamp with the lamp itself directly at the height that this sign will be. So there is a functioning street light that will illuminate it right out front.
I don't want to speak for Brett, but I think the intent of this light is not to add more light. It's to create to emphasize the sign itself, the lettering.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there's a street lamp right out front that will illuminate that sign.
Which will probably be washed out a little.
That's not something that you can show because if it's a well-designed street lamp, it's going to be focused down on the street and it's going to create a pretty small pattern of light underneath. A light that's not designed to illuminate the sign will not illuminate the sign. I mean, if anything, it'll distract from it and make it harder to read because there's a bright light near it. So that doesn't answer the question. I think the question is this sign going to add light pollution to the block that we should be concerned about?
That's true.
Well, there's some who would say that it's not polluting, that it's a nice thing and it will direct
So
people.
I just want to address our committee. And for the new members on the committee, I'd just like to encourage you to wrap up this part of the meeting so that we can have our discussion and preferably not in front of the applicant. We'll hash it out, don't worry.
All right, well, I'm ready to close this and we can go on to our meeting.
Well, if I may, just kind of in closing here, just real briefly, and I do appreciate all of your time this evening. We certainly would like to have the lighting. We believe that we can make it such that, both with turning it off at certain times and, addressing your concerns, we do believe that we can make it a nice sign that would not add light pollution. We do have approval from Historic and Art Commission. But again, it's also important to us that we proceed. And, if the board is adamant about not having the lighting, we would agree to accept a condition by the board that the sign not be illuminated, but that you would approve the location and the size as shown on here without the lighting.
Well, thank you very much for working with us on all points.
Just real quick, 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, what Carrie said, like, I think I love this sign with the neon. I think it's a very beautiful sign. And even backing up, I love the Academy of Social Dance sign. Like, to me, it's such an iconic part of that block. And it's one of the main reasons that I was drawn to this building. So the size is the most important thing, like keeping that sign, and if it's, yeah, I would love to have you all to approve this sign as is. However, if this is like the main sticking point, like, we'll still make a beautiful sign without it. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Great. If there's no further questions, then we will wrap it up.
All right. I think we're set.
All right. Thank you very much for allowing us to come back this evening.
Have a nice night. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
And don't forget to stop the recording.
Yep, I'm doing it now.